I'm sure other people are going to join, but I don't like to delay things. I kind of prefer to try and start on time if I can. So the topic that, when we kind of set this whole thing out, the topic that Esteban wanted me to talk about today, I think is important, but I think it's just as important for anybody that's on here, whether you're a client or a CSM, to definitely be involved with the conversation. I mean, again, I know I said this last week. Hey, McLean. But guys, I just am trying to stress to you that this isn't for me, and this isn't a vanity or an ego project. Honestly, I'd be lying if I said I cared about anything that much, because I don't. So I just hope that you guys understand that while I'm talking, as we're discussing things, I don't want to make this into a thing where it's like weekly people get on, they don't put on their video, they don't do anything, and they're just listening just to hear me try and rattle shit off for an hour. Because the reality, guys, is that's not how anybody learns. And it's very few people that are going to learn just from hearing audio things only. As well as for myself, I would much rather have it be something where it's more of an interactive discussion, where you guys feel comfortable and would prefer to be asking questions, asking me for advice, or if you have something that's working great for you. I think I said it last week, but my philosophy on the weekly conversion trainings are kind of the same as what I've always had towards like a morning meeting if you were doing it as an in-person business, which is, if you as a wholesaler, an investor, whatever your strategy is in this business, if you are doing, 6 to 10 deals a month, then the meeting needs you in it, because people need to be hearing about your success, but also what you're doing to get that success. And if you're not doing at least 6 to 10 deals a month, then you probably need the meeting because you're not performing at a level that's high enough to usually be able to sustain financial independence, personal growth, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm only saying that, guys, because as we talk about, today I'd like to discuss conversion killers with people. But by all means, as we go through this stuff, if there's something that you feel as though you would benefit from, whether it's an objection, whether it's something that you hear, whether it's you're making calls and you're getting the same thing over and over, how you're dealing or how you're responding to a lead, anything like that, guys, I really hope and I encourage that you will, be confident enough in yourself to just chime in and share your thoughts, your feelings, what you're going through and stuff like that. Because this business is not a hard business. But the one thing that I kind of keep having like an overwhelming feeling from is that some people, and I'm not saying you guys, but that there's some people that I've spoken to that expect, because they sign up with Hustle Media and because they pay a monthly service fee and they're spending money on Facebook advertising, like deals are just going to rain in from the sky. That's not usually how this works. You know what I mean? You still have to put in work and effort on your part so that you can actually get to the goals that you would hopefully like to get to. Granted, the leads have to be there to support that, which we're going to talk about. But if the leads are there, there's really no reason why we shouldn't be able to convert at a high enough level. Yeah, what's up, Angel? Do you have a question, or are you just raising your
I
hand?
do. Give me just a second. I was trying to get my camera on for you.
It's all good. There you are.
Here I am. Yeah. So you said you're going to touch on it. So just stop me now if you are actually going to touch on this piece of it. I am curious, at your comment that you should be closing, say 5 to 10 deals a month. In order to close that many deals a month, how many leads are you working? And are they cold?
In order for me to close,
or
in order
inbound?
for, I can only speak for me personally, but in order for me to close between like 6 to 10 deals a month, I usually need to have around 30 to 40 valid conversations, like conversations with the seller.
Okay.
So my conversion rate stays at about 33% in real estate. as well as a couple other sales that I've been involved with. I'm usually pretty consistent at about 1 out of 3.
And
So
they can be an inbound or a cold lead, cold calling lead,
correct,
correct?
correct. It doesn't because, and that's actually a great segue to what I'm going to talk about. So this is where I'm going to go with that, right? It doesn't matter where the leads come from. And I say that because guys, like the one thing that I've heard several people say is like, well, I'm not getting enough leads. I'm not getting enough leads from Hessel or something like that. But yet people hear me talking about deals all the time. I just bought another property this morning. That one was brought to me by somebody else. I had no idea about the deal. I didn't have anything to do with it. And all of a sudden I got a phone call one day and was like, hey, do you want to buy a property on Roosevelt Avenue? I'm like, give me the details. And it's a 4-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom, blah, 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 blah. What's the price? Yeah, I'll buy it. You know what I mean? Now I'm going to probably end up making 25, 30K off of it when it's done. But again, that's because I try and cast a real broad net, because like yesterday or 2 days ago, I was on a phone call with somebody where they were talking about, like this is their only dedicated lead stream and how they're not getting enough leads and this isn't happening. And I understand that when you're brand new, you need to find a way to maximize, what's the cheapest cost to get leads compared to how you can maximize it. But there's a lot cheaper ways than even dealing with Hessel Media. And I'm not saying that I would never quit my online advertising. Like that's my one constant is I don't care if like shit starts falling from the heavens and I'm literally out there carrying a poop umbrella. I'm still going to have online advertising going. And the reason why is because, again, I'm trying to cast as broad of a net as possible. And it's like yesterday I was talking to Carlos and I was explaining the reason for my thinking behind that is because, if I was to go to where Carlos lives in Colombia and he was like, this is the best fishing spot, this is my favorite place to go. And I was like, all right, cool. And he gave me just a piece of fishing like line and a hook. At best, even if I have the greatest bait in the world, I'm only going to probably catch one fish, if that. You know what I mean? Whereas if we go to his favorite fishing spot and he's like, look, this is where a lot of fish are, and I'm able to throw out a 50 or 60-foot net, sure, I'm going to probably pull in some plastic bottles and an old boot and somebody's CD player from 30 years ago, but I'm also probably going to have a whole lot more fish to pick from. And that's what I'm trying to get at by that statement is that, you want to try and have as broad of a net as possible. And I'm going to talk about some things that I think are really helpful that don't have much cost or any cost at all. And how you can maximize those, and then how you can learn from that so that when you do actually get a Hessel Media lead or any other type of lead, whether it's postcard, direct mail, cold calling, telemarketing, PPC, Facebook, SEO, whatever type of lead you're getting, I'm going to kind of wrap it all into how it can benefit you with Hessel Media. Okay. So the truth of this business is, in any business in life, is the more that we do something, the more comfortable we're going to get and the better we're going to get at it. We're going to become more fluid at something. I don't know anybody that has ever mastered something from just watching a video or just watching their friend do it. I don't know how many of you guys are married or have like a significant other, but I almost promise most of you that nobody on here met their significant other from looking at their best friend and being like, hey, that's a cute guy over there. Go get his number and start dating him for a long time and let me know how it goes. I'll see if I want to jump in then. And vice versa for women. Like there's no guy out there that's like, oh my God, look at that woman at the bar. Let me go get one of my friends to go take her out on a few dates for some weeks. And then I'll see if she's interested in me. It doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? You have to be willing to eventually cross that threshold from brand new and nervous to just being willing to say, screw it. What do I have to lose? So a couple of things that I have personally found to be really helpful for me as far as starting to overcome that and get past it was I had never been involved in phone sales before. I had, 15 years of selling experience, but it was all person to person, face to face. And that was kind of my wheelhouse. And when I first started on the phone, I was really good at talking to somebody. I could have a conversation, but it was definitely a lot different for me. And I would find myself constantly trying to push for an in person appointment, so that I could meet the person, which to be honest, at this point in the game, I still prefer in person appointments. I like to be able to have that face to face interaction, them to see me, me to see them. But I've also done face to face, appointments over Zoom. I've done them over FaceTime. I've done them over Google Meet. And that's just because I want them to see my expressions on my face. I want them to see my mannerisms. I want them to hear, and not just hear, but also see my voice inflection and things like that. So when I was brand new in wholesaling, some things that I would do were, I looked at it like, okay, the only way I'm going to get good at phone conversations is by having a lot of conversations. So what can I do to try and increase my level of conversations with people, even though at the time our lead flow was kind of slow? So what I started doing was kind of going back to my roots. I got onto Vistaprint, and I know I've showed some of you guys images before, but I just printed out a whole bunch of these, like, hey, we buy ugly houses type door hangers. And I would go out every Saturday, or Sunday, and I would look at it just kind of like some exercise for myself. I'd take an hour. I took my ex's daughter out with me before. I took myself. I going out with my dogs. I'd taken my little electric scooter with a horn on it, and I ride all over neighborhoods. And I look for neighborhoods with distressed properties. I also look for neighborhoods that maybe have a little bit of dated properties in them, because some of that stuff is free for you to learn, like it was for me. I didn't know the difference between metal siding and vinyl siding. I didn't know the different types of construction. So I started to learn that stuff from looking at videos online and trying to inform myself on the industry that I had made a choice I wanted to be part of. But what I found was, from doing door hangers, and from leaving notes at people's properties, I started to get more inbound action. So I started having people calling me. And the reason that that mattered for me, in my opinion, was because it took some of that stress and pressure off. It's like, if you have to call a complete stranger to sit there, and if I have to call Angel, for example, I know absolutely nothing about her, and I have to try and start the conversation off cold. But it's like, if I know that Angel is calling me, now I'm the one that she has to start that conversation off cold. So it's a real easy way to break the ice. Now, imagine if not only did she have to call me and start the conversation off cold, but I knew that, like, she'd been driving around with an airbag that was ready to explode in her face in her car, and her horn wasn't working. And she's like, I've got to get this fixed. And now all of a sudden I have that information too, and she's calling me. Or let's say I was already by the house. I kind of remember the area a little bit. And I remember, like, oh, yeah, I remember some of the homes in there. So I kind of know that if I was leaving cards and there was bad siding or old windows, things like that, when she calls me now, my confidence is naturally going to be a lot higher. And I'm going to be prone to have a better, more thorough, more valid conversation with her. And I understand not everybody can do that, because you maybe aren't working your local market. Maybe you're not practicing, or you're not actively working in neighborhoods that you want to buy in. And that's fine if that's the case. So I'm going to go through two scenarios. One, if you're doing it in person, I would say try and become as proactive as you can. And what I mean by proactive is just, you want to try and find ways to engage in the community that you live in. And engage people can be a lot of different things. It can be, do you talk about your business? How often are you posting on social media? I'm not a huge fan of social media, but I still have to get on there usually once or twice a week and write a simple little post like, hey guys, just remember, we're still buying homes in York. Anybody that wants to do, anybody that's looking to buy, sell, or rent a property in this area, please give me a call. And if you know somebody, call me, I'll pay you up to $1,000 cash if I buy their house. I get leads from that all the time. I mean, again, when I say I get leads from something all the time, I'm not talking like I'm getting 10 deals a month or 5 deals a month. But think of it like this. If you were able to pick up one deal a month that you made, say, $15,000 on from going out and laying cards for an hour every Sunday, does that make it worth it? For me, it does. You know what I mean? So if I'm able to pick up one deal from that, I pick up one deal organically from just people knowing that this is the business I'm in. And I can pick up one deal from my own personal social network of friends, family, people that know that I buy and fix, crap houses, stuff like that. Then I've already set myself up with probably 2 to 3 deals for the month going into it that I made good money on. Now it's much easier for when I get a lead from Hessel Media. It's not like there's this pressure there that's like, oh my God, I have to make it work. I have to get this deal. I have to, like, Carlos, why aren't these people answering the phone? Or Laura, this person gave me a bad phone number. The reason I don't have that pressure is because I have external sources that are feeding into my lake of deals. So it constantly stays full. But I know I've said this before on the calls. It's like, imagine if you had a lake and you had this large lake and that lake was your lead source. Would you want one little tiny stream flowing into it? Or would you want a massive river and 20 other streams flowing into it? I'm the type of person, I want those 20 streams, because if the river messes up, if there's a catastrophic issue, my lake still stays filled up with, or my pipeline, as we call it in this business, stays filled up with not just valid people that I can talk to and conversations that I can have, but there's deals that just get done. And sometimes it seems like pennies fall from heaven because of it. I just had one of those situations yesterday where a home that I bought that wasn't supposed to be able to close until August. I had been trying to get the next door neighbor to just call me back about the property. It was in way worse shape than the property I'm buying. It looked super distressed. Siding was falling off of it. The curtain rod was like at a 45-degree angle. And it was like, this is literally in my wheelhouse. I left notes on the woman's door. I left notes on the woman's door. I sent her mail. And I have the next door neighbor's house under contract. I even put a "We Buy Ugly Houses" sign in her front yard. And she posted about it on social media. And I saw like that I was tagged in it. My company was tagged, not me. And she's like, who's the asshole leaving these signs in my yard? But here's why I say it's a pennies from heaven. I do all that work to try and get this property, and I didn't ever buy it, right? I was trying to call her up until last week. And then I find out yesterday that this property, because of me constantly harassing her, she called a realtor instead of calling me. Whatever, that's her choice. I don't care. But here's the important thing. I have the property that I'm getting under contract for 190,000. It needs about 10,000 worth of work, and I was planning to list it for 289.9. Right? I find out yesterday that the next door neighbor's house that I've been trying to buy just sold for 295, and it sold in 3 days on market with 5 offers. So that instantly means that I just super increased my equity on the property that I'm taking down. And I literally just made an extra $30,000 on my deal from my little bit of proactive work of sending this woman 3 or 4 postcards, calling her 5 or 6 times, and putting a sign in her front yard. You know what I mean? I'm really glad that that happened. But again, when you put that out into the universe, you're a lot more likely to get those things back. So the first thing I would try and tell everybody is, especially if you're new, look for ways that you can organically increase your, not only your lead flow, but more importantly, the amount of conversations you're having. Because the true ability of somebody to convert something from a lead to a deal is up to you. But I can't sit there, guys, and make every phone call with you. I can't sit there and walk you through every deal step by step. You're going to be the one that has to figure that part out. You know what I mean? Your CSMs, myself, the team at Hessel Media, they can do a lot of things for you. But I can't help you when you get on the phone and you're like, Hi, is this Laura? Hi, Laura. My name is Jesse calling from Home Buyers Incorporated. You know what I mean? You sound like shit at that point. So how do you overcome that? From getting so used to being able to be like, hey, what's up, Laura? How are you doing? Hey, great. This is Jesse. I'm calling from Easy Exit Home Buyers in York, PA. Don't worry, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm actually calling you about the property that you have on Edsel Street, because that's how you start to get that confidence to where you just get a natural flow about you, to where when somebody does answer the phone, you don't have that nervousness and that nervous energy where you're hoping to try and make it, turn into something rather than just, it's just another day. It's just another phone conversation for you. It's just another person. Because what is a lead? A lead is a phone number. That's all it is. A lead is a name and a phone number. No different than if I took you out and I said, you need to go knock this street and find a house to buy. A lot of people would be like, well, how do I do that? What do you mean? It's no different. You go knock on somebody's door and talk to them, ask them if they want to sell their house. And if they say no, start arguing with them. You know what I mean? But from doing that and from having regular, continual conversations, from looking over your script, from looking over the reference materials that your CSMs can give you, you're going to become a lot more inclined to be much more natural, and not just natural, but a lot more fluid in what you're speaking and when you're speaking to people. So what I'm going to talk to you guys, or what I'm going to tell you guys, is 5 simple steps that I try and follow every time that I get on a phone call with anybody. I try and basically boil it down to 5 real simple things that I feel help me to convert at a higher level and prevent conversion killers. Because what are conversion killers? Conversion killers, aside from like a bogus phone number, aside from some crazy old person that's like, I never gave you my phone number. It's like, okay, yeah, you're right. Facebook filled it all out by itself. You got me. You know what I mean? Aside from those type of wacky bullshit situations, this business is pretty much always going to be the exact same. You're not going to get every deal. You're going to get some people that want to sell for retail. You're going to get some people that you need to try and nudge a little bit into a deal. And you're going to get some people that just want to do a deal. They're like, look, you give me this, you got it. It's your property. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to focus on the super easy ones, but I'm also not going to dedicate my time in my thought process to those really, really hard ones. It's like I have some people say, well, how do you deal with the people that just demand that they get retail? I Real simple. I tell them I'm probably not the person for you. You know what I mean? Like I would not, and they're like, well, how do you address that? I'm like, I tell them the truth. I'm like, you must be living on fucking Pluto, lady, because I'd never buy that house for this amount of money. Like, good luck if you can find somebody to, but I'm telling you, you're not going to. And I get off the phone and I keep it moving with my day. That's how I deal with it, because one lead's not that important. If I don't get this deal, I'll get the next one. And if I don't get that deal, I'm going to get the one after that. I've never met anybody that can convert at more than like 50 to like 45 to 50% is the absolute highest you can probably get to in this business, because you're going to have crackheads do crackhead shit. You know what I mean? I don't know if you guys have crackheads down in Colombia, Carlos and Laura, but that's just the truth. People are going to do some screwball stuff once in a while. So don't focus on the exception, focus on the rule, which is the rule is that if I can follow 5 real simple steps every time I talk to somebody, I'm probably going to be able to have a really good conversation with them, figure out all the pain points, what's their motivation to sell, things like that. And I'll probably be able to at least present an offer to them, which in turn can 1 out of 3 times turn into me figuring out a way to negotiate a good deal with them. Fair enough? So, and again, guys, I see that a lot more people are starting to sign on. Nobody wants to have their video on. That's fine. I get it. It's hard to compete with a face this good looking, but that's your business. So the first thing that I try and understand every time that I get on a phone conversation with somebody is real simple, right? And I know I said this before, but selling isn't what you do to someone, it's what you do for them. So my first and main goal every time I get a lead, doesn't matter where the lead comes from, my first and my biggest goal that I'm always looking at is I'm there to help the customer or the person that owns the property make a decision to either sell it or to not sell it. Because if I can keep that as my focus, like, hey, listen, I've got to help this person figure out if I'm a good fit for them, but also I'm going to try and give them as much info as I can to help them decide if this is really a good time to sell the property and why they're trying to sell the property. Because if I can focus on helping them to decide that it's a great time to sell the property, guess what they're going to be more inclined to do? Hear my lowball offer. That's just the truth. And especially, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but what's really helping them try and decide to buy? Like, Angel, what's one thing that you could do to try and help a person decide to buy?
I don't know about helping them decide to buy.
I
But
know
just,
it's a tough question. Not everybody's.
well, I mean, just a thing more clarification. Are you asking me how I would motivate someone to buy something?
Yeah. As far as selling the
Well,
property to you.
oh, the first thing I want to do is just kind of build some trust. I generally kind of talk about some past projects or things that I just worked on, so that they know that I'm not a one-hit wonder. I'm an experienced investor who can get the deal done. So I really just spend a little time in the beginning building trust and rapport with that person.
She nailed it. Spot on, right? So the first and the easiest way for me to explain to somebody to help them decide to buy is always keeping, the way I always try and teach people is keep in your mind like this. If somebody was calling your mother or your father or your grandparents, somebody that's important and close to you in life, and you walked in mid conversation, they were on speakerphone, how would you want that person speaking to your mom? I know me personally, if I walked in and my mom was on the phone and some person, whether it's a woman or man, is on the phone being rude to her or kind of abrasive, I'd be like, hang that effing phone up. You know what I mean? Like, my mom knows me. I'd be like, bang that shit. You know what I mean? Like, because again, I want to try and be as personable as I can to the person. But like Angel said, I need to be able to build that trust with them. So a lot of times when people talk to me, you'll hear me talk about going through the steps. And I look at it kind of like if I met you at your front door and you have a few steps that come down and you open the door. Well, if I'm just talking to you at the front door, I'm a complete stranger. But if at some point during that conversation you say, well, here, come upstairs, sit down and talk to me, I've now earned your trust enough to where you're welcoming me into your home. You're willing to actually hear what I have to say. So the first thing that I always approach a person with is, how can I get on the best level with them? You know what I mean? What can I do to find things in common? Just making conversation. A lot of times my conversations goes as simple as like, so how's your day going? Think about it. I mean, it's a simple thing to ask people, but when's the last time a stranger asked you, how are you doing? Like, how's life? How's everything with your family? Because those things actually matter to us, and that starts to appeal to our emotion, right? Because in sales, we have logic and emotion, right? The logic is why we should do something, and the emotion is how we feel about doing something. So I'm not going to be able to tap into their logic or their emotion if they first trust me enough to let me into their personal space. Okay. So with helping the customer decide to buy, it's a lot of times just about having a conversation, building some rapport with the person. You don't have to call it that, but really it's just getting to know them, the situation, and some things about the property. Now, in doing that, you're going to start to, as what Juan used to call a lot of times, like digging for their pain points, because people will usually start to tell you what's going on in their life, their situation, the property, etc., once they start to cross that bridge of trust with you. It's like if a perfect stranger calls, they're kind of hesitant to tell you what's going on. But once you've been on the phone with them for 5 minutes and you're asking them, so, hey, let me ask you a question, Laura. I mean, I can see the pictures of your house on Walnut Street. It seems like a pretty nice place. Do you mind if I ask, why are you thinking about selling it? All of a sudden she might say, well, it's because, my kids are grown up and they went off to college, and my husband had a heart attack and he can't take care of the yard anymore. And this place is just too big for us, and blah, 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 blah. And they'll start to literally walk you through how to sell them, right? So as I'm trying to think about helping the customer decide to buy, it goes right into my second step, right? Because whatever that information they're telling me at the first step, as I'm building trust and learning about the property, I'm going to roll right into my second step, which is selling over the short-term benefits and the long-term rewards. Okay. So again, as they start to give me information, whether you are able to just keep it in your mind and process it mentally, I'm one of those people. And the only reason I'm saying this is because I personally am one of those people that if you tell me something, if you text me something today or tomorrow, I'll remember it 3 years from now. Like I'll call you out on it. I'll be like, oh no, Laura, you text me, I sent you that picture 3 months ago on, the 10th day, blah, 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 blah. Or, whoever it is. Like, that's just who I am. I got like that because I used to walk around with those yellow legal notepads, and I had to write everything down because I was a raging pothead that couldn't remember anything for more than like 30 seconds. So I eventually laid off the weed a little bit, and my memory started to gradually increase a whole lot more to where now I don't use the notepads, but I'm very actively involved in the conversation because I want to retain that information so that as I start to have a conversation with them, they never feel like they're being sold. They just feel like we're continuing the conversation. And by selling them over the short term and long term reward. So we're going to talk about the short term benefits of them selling the property. So, for example, if I was talking to Angel and she told me how her husband had a stroke and the yard work is just too much and the property's too big and things like that, as I start to ease into kind of my script and I want her to tell me about the property, I'm going to constantly keep coming back to that same thing. So when I'm like, so Angel, I can see the property records online. Do you mind telling me a little bit about the property? So I see here that it's 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Yep. Oh my gosh, that is a huge house that your husband would have to take care of. And with his stroke, I totally understand you guys wanting to downsize for sure. What am I doing? I'm planting that seed in their mind over and over and over again that now's the best time to sell. Now is the right time to sell. This house is too big. It is too much work for us. It is too much of a headache or a hassle. Or if it's a landlord situation, I'm going to emphasize how the tenant problem is getting worse and for some people. I'm going to talk about, oh, the bank rates are going up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm selling on the here and now. So to summarize step 2, I talk about the here and now and then how that's going to benefit them. Like, one that I've been running into a lot is people telling me that they want to move closer to their children. Because the truth is, it's like people that bought a home, and it's crazy to think like this, but it's like, to me, if somebody was like, oh yeah, I just got a new car, it's a 97 Mustang, I'd be like, oh sweet, man, because I remember when 97 Mustangs came out. But in reality, that's a 26-year-old freaking vehicle at this point. You know what I mean? And we don't think about that. So it's like when the person's sitting there saying like, well, my kids are starting, my kids ended up going to college in this town, and now my daughter lives in Florida and my son's in Louisiana, but he travels a lot for work. It's like, okay, I realize these people are probably in their late 50s, early 60s. They're starting to think about what their next step's going to be because they're starting to try and plan for, okay, this was this step in life. Where are we going to go? What's our next thing going to be? So again, I'm going to take that information in and I'm going to be talking to them about, hey, I understand, Angel, that, you want to sell the property because, let's be honest, a 4-bedroom house, that is big. And it seems to me like you've already kind of made up your mind where your heart and your mind is already down south, where you can be a lot closer to the kids, the grandkids, and all those types of memories than wanting to still worry with this giant house that's, an older property and things like that. So again, I'm going to start selling on the benefits of why they want to move on to the next step. So that's the second thing that I always look to do in every conversation, selling on the short-term benefit and the long-term reward. Why they should do it now, how it's going to benefit life for them, make it easier, not have to deal with the property, not have to deal with the headaches, the repairs, whatever it might be. Number three is, I know I already talked about this, but for me, I operate from a very logical standpoint on everything that I do. I take emotion. It's not that I don't have emotions. I do. I'm a sensitive person, but I just don't factor those into my business decisions and my financial decisions. I am not like most people, though. You guys got to think, like, especially if you're talking to a person that's a sophisticated investor or a person that's just used to investing. Most people, when they go to buy a house, it's like, oh, it's closing day. They go and they sit down and like their realtor's there and there's an attorney or a title agent. And it's like they're signing all these documents. Whereas with me, it's like I show up in my gym shorts and like a cut off sleeve t-shirt. I'm like, hey, I got to be really quick with this shit. Can I sign my papers and leave? Like, they're calling me like, hey, what do you want these keys? And I'm like, whatever, I'll pick them up later, because that's who I am. But most people aren't like that. So I want to try and get to their emotion side and their logic side. Why do I care about both? Because the logic is going to tell them that, hey, we should accept this deal. Their emotion is going to tell them we should accept this deal right now, right? So if I can appeal to their emotional side of thinking, they're much more inclined to not only give me a favorable answer, but they're also probably more inclined to be willing to give me a deeper discount because I'm, again, appealing to their emotion. And we're all people here. So it's like if your child or a friend of yours comes up and is just telling you about, let's say, we'll just use a random situation, but let's say a friend of yours, and I'm going to use female for this. Let's say a female friend of yours calls you and is telling you about an issue that they have in a relationship, right? You're going to probably be inclined to be like, oh, that sucks. You know what I mean? I'm sorry to hear it. Maybe you'll give them your opinion on it, things like that. But an Angel, I don't know you that well. I've honestly never met you. But if your girlfriend, like a close friend of yours, called you up just sobbing, I mean, you could just hear the tears running down their face. Are you still going to be like, well, this is how I'd handle that situation? No, you're immediately going to go into, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Do you want to come over? Listen, I'm going to stop and get a bottle of wine. Come over tonight. And when you see him, you're right away going to give him a hug. It's okay. You know what I mean? We're going to get through this. You're strong. Because why? You're on their emotional level, not on their logic level. Their logic level might be thinking it's not that big of a deal, all this other stuff, but their emotions are going crazy. So you have to connect with them on that level. It's the exact same when somebody's trying to sell us a property. If we can tap through the logic side of things and get to their emotion, that's when they're going to start to be willing to give us much more deeper discounts. How does that play into the whole 5-step thing? It plays into it from step one, because like Angel said, I want to try and build that rapport. And part of building that rapport is instilling in them the trust and the confidence that this isn't my first rodeo. You know what I mean? I've been there. I've done this. This is all something that I'm used to. And even if it's not something that you're used to, you still have to understand that this person is counting on you to be kind of like their coach, kind of like their mentor, kind of like the person that's going to hold their hand and walk them through this transaction. So they want to have that faith in somebody, whether it's a realtor, a buyer, it doesn't matter. But through me being able to tell them a little bit about myself in step one, why I'm a good fit for the property, letting them know. I know you guys have heard me talk about before that you want to always try and tie in other deals that you've done. I was looking at a property on Monday and right away I kept talking about, you remind me of this woman, Jamie. I just bought her property like a mile away. She's in a similar situation. And then every time we're going through things on the properties, oh my gosh, you're just like, you sure you don't know Jamie? And she's like, no, I don't know her. I'm like, because I swear you guys, she's black, you're white, but you guys are like twin sisters if you ask me. And the woman's just eating it up. She's laughing, having a good time, talking about, this is a crazy woman. I told some of the CSMs, this one was nuts, but it was a great nuts. You know what I mean? When I showed up, the woman was like, oh, I was hoping you were 15 years older. And I was like, why is that? She's like, because I'm drunk and horny. I was like, whoa, that caught me off guard. I was like, all right, lady. Well, yeah, I'm not interested in all that. I'm just here for the property, but okay. But again, it's having that fun with people. It's getting them to smile, getting to smile back with them. You know what I mean? Listen, and the other thing that I'll tell you with emotion and logic is, especially you guys that are doing this stuff virtually, whether you realize it or not. It's like I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and I've told her before, I was like, and I've said to her, on a friendly level, like, I love hearing you laugh. Because when she laughs, guess what I do? I smile from it. You know what I mean? If you guys, when you're on the phone, if you're not smiling and laughing, just hang up the phone, call them back when you can. You know what I mean? Because if you're taking it that serious, you're not in a good mind space and in a good mindset to really be making those calls effectively. So you want to be able to smile, because like they always used to say in the other business I was involved with, like, smile and dial, you wacky son of a bitch. Because what it really is saying is that your emotions are transparent. So when you can be in a good mood and when you're light and vibrant and having an excited time, the person's probably a lot more likely to do that as well, because you can tell if somebody's being hostile over the phone. It's kind of like if I was standing there like arms crossed the whole time, looking pissed off, that's a defensive posture. But if I'm sitting here and I'm leaned in and I'm like talking and I'm staring at you right in the eyes, I'm engaged with you all of a sudden. So I'm bringing it to that personal level. So when you're talking about emotion and logic, all right, with people, the easiest way to break through that barrier, in my opinion, is to just have a good time and be enjoyable. Because the easiest thing to do is smile. They always say it actually takes more work to frown than it does to smile. That's the truth. It takes 32 muscles to smile and 62 to frown. So just smile, you know what I mean? Be in a good mood, and you'll probably get the same thing received back to you. The fourth thing that we'll talk about is that you want to try and address as you're talking to these people. Again, we're talking about getting a lead in and making contact with that lead. The thing that you want to try and remember as you're talking to these people is to cover the objections before they come up. Something that I keep hearing from people is they're like, I get through my pitch and then they give me an objection. And to be honest with you, I can't relate to that, because for me, I'm always looking for what objection could be coming at me. It's like my brain is like a radar, to where every time I'm talking to that person, I'm constantly scanning for what could stop what could stop this deal from going through. Could it be a price objection? Could it be a spouse objection? Could it be talking to my kids? Could it be, I need to do this, I need to do that? And whatever I'm sensing and feeling those objections might be, I'm covering them before they come up. So what I mean by that is, like, let's say I'm talking to somebody and they keep telling me about all of the other homes that have sold in the area, or how they saw, they saw on Zillow. And again, I'm using what they're telling me and I'm just storing it in my brain to use back against them. So let's say I'm talking to Angel, and at some point I say, wow, Angel, I actually do a lot of business in that area. And she says the comment like, yeah, I saw on Zillow, it says my house is worth $475,000. Again, take it, catalog it, log it in my brain. And now maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes later, where it seems like it's natural conversation, I now can drop that little nugget of like, Angel, sometimes I see properties like this and they're gorgeous, where it's really right in my wheelhouse. It's the type of property I really like to buy. But sometimes people, like, they get online or they see like Zillow or like realtor.com or something, and they don't realize that those are just computer algorithms that aren't factoring in all the specifics to a property. And so when they're like, oh, your house could be worth 310,000 to 480,000, and the person's like, well, that means my place is worth 480. That's not the way that this works. And I just want to tell you that up front, because I don't want, and again, I'm just tying it into closing it in the back end. So I'll say something like, I'm just saying that up front, Angel, because I don't want us to go through here, me fall in love with the property, you fall in love with me, and then we get down to the money and you try and throw one of those crazy figures at me, like something you saw on the web or something like that. But you seem way more sophisticated than that. I wouldn't expect you to even do it to begin with. So what did I just do? Boom, planted the seed in her mind of like, oh, throw that shit out the window. He doesn't care. You know what I mean? And again, I'm doing that because I want to address the objection before it could possibly come up. So I know some of you guys have heard me say before, but there's like 5 basic lies that I put into an acronym called PANTS, PANTS, which those are the 5 reasons that people don't sell us the property. They're either going to tell us that it's not a priority to sell it. They're going to tell us that it's an affordability issue, meaning that we're not offering them enough money. Like they can't afford to sell it for that cheap. They're going to tell us that they're not in the market to sell the property. They're going to tell us that they need to think about it, or they're going to tell us that they need to speak to a significant other, spouse, or someone else. PANTS. It's the easiest way to remember it. So my objective when I'm talking to these people is to find a way to, as I jokingly say, take their pants off. But really, that's all I'm trying to do is to try and take away the objections before they can present them to me. Because if I can take them away and make them feel as though that would be silly to try and present that with me, then they're less likely to do it. And if they do decide to give me one of those objections, then I can revert back to our conversation that we already had, which is like, let's say I'm talking to Angel and we get all done everything. And she says, well, everything sounds good, but I'd need to think about it. Right. Well, then I can roll right back into, hey, Angel, I completely understand what you're saying. In fact, I appreciate that. Because let's be honest, Angel, I mean, you wouldn't think about something that you weren't considering, would you? She's going to say no. And then I can go right into, but Angel, correct me if I'm wrong. And I just am asking because I don't want to like have any incorrect information. But when we were walking through the house and you were talking about how it's just too big and it's just too much work for you to deal with anymore, you don't have to think about that part. Like, you know that it's too much work. You're ready to move on from it, right? Yeah. Okay. And Angel, when we were outside and we were like looking at some of the repairs that need to happen, like the siding and how the roof needs repaired, like you don't have to think about wanting to do those. Like, you know that those things need repaired, right?
Mhm.
Yes. So, Angel, the reason I ask that is because I don't want to get 10, 15, 20 minutes off of this phone call and you start thinking about it. And I'm not here to answer the questions that you have. So if we know that the house isn't for us anymore, we know that we want to sell it. It seems to me the only thing we'd really be thinking about would be the money. Is that correct? Again, that's the easy one. That's the one that I want to get because that's the one that I can overcome. So I'm listening to her objection. I'm restating it back to her, starting to overcome it. And now I'm isolating that objection out. So really, we're just talking about the money. It's not that we need to think about selling the house or think about whether or not the house needs the work or not that we talked about. It's just about the money. Is that correct? So Angel, while I'm here, you're here. Let's think about it together. Do you mind if I just ask you a few simple questions? And then I can roll right into covering that objection and closing the deal on the spot without having to call her back, without having to set up another phone call, because I'm willing to have the intestinal fortitude to say, okay, it's just an objection, not a big deal. We covered it during our conversation. So let's just go back and readdress what we already covered. The other truth is that I don't know about you guys, but when I go see a property, either in person or I talk to the person on the phone, the average acquisitions phone call for me on a property that I'm able to buy is usually about 30 to 45 minutes. You know what I mean? And listen, I don't expect the seller to be quite as seasoned as I am. So I don't expect them to retain every piece of information. So by the time we get to 45 minutes later, they may have forgotten what we talked about a half hour ago. So the objection seems valid in their mind, but when I take them back and refresh them, hey, we already discussed this. We already agreed that that's not that important. It's a lot easier to bring them right back up to where we are now at full speed and agree that objection doesn't really matter to begin with. So again, step number 4 is I want to try and cover every objection before they can come up, at least the 5 major ones. And then step number 5, the final one, is understanding that you have to be fluid. You know, I always try and tell people a saying that I heard when I was like 21 years old that stuck with me is that change is inevitable. You're either going to go with it and grow with it, or you're going to sink and drown. Because if you think of an ocean, right? I think we've all probably seen the ocean or a body of water at some point in our life. What's constantly happening? There's shifting, there's changing, there's ups, there's downs, there's waves, there's tides, things like that. So I apply that to my sales pitch because every situation's not going to be different, or every situation is going to be different. One, the person's name's usually going to be different, but two, the actual specific situation of why they want to sell, when they need to sell, how much they want to sell. Do they want top dollar for it? Are they willing to take a discount? Do they feel it needs a lot of work? Do they not? So if I can go into it upfront knowing, hey, I can't be confined in a little box. I have to be able to, if you guys ever saw the, what was that movie with Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell? The Other Guys, the movie The Other Guys, where he's like, I need to spread my wings. I need to fly. You know what I mean? So it's kind of the same thing. I don't want to be confined into a little box. I want to be able to spread my wings and kind of adapt to any situation that presents itself. So that if it's a person that wants full retail, maybe I pitch them on an ovation. If it's a person that needs to move, maybe I pitch them on, a wholesale deal. If it's a rundown crap hole property, maybe I try and talk to them about doing, a straight cash deal as is. So I want to try and go into it knowing that every situation can be completely different, so that I'm as adaptable as possible to that situation, so that I don't get stuck in my ways and dead set on this is how it has to be done. And rather I'm thinking, how can I accommodate this person and adapt myself to be able to benefit them in their situation? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And to me, those 5 simple steps have always allowed me to convert at a higher level. Because again, from the very beginning, I'm going into it looking like, hey, I'm just here to help this person come to a decision that I'm a good fit to buy the property. They are at the point where they're ready to sell the property. Then I start talking to them about why it's going to help them right now and how that's going to help them in the grand scheme, the long term of life. Then I start talking about the logic of things and the emotion behind it. After we cover all that stuff throughout the pitch, I'm going to go over and I'm going to start to try and make sure I'm touching on all the objections before they come up. And at the end of all of that, when we get down to the money part, that's the part when I realize, okay, I've covered my objections. We've talked about the logic and emotion. We've talked about all the benefits of selling this property and how it's going to affect us long term. And we've definitely earned each other's trust and friendship. The only thing we have left to figure out, Angel, is the money. If the dollars can make sense for me and if the cents will make dollars for you. Understand? So do you mind if we talk about money for a second? And that's the very last thing that I'm going to talk about. Because what don't people like to talk about? Money with their friends. It's just the truth. So if I can make them love me, they're going to feel a lot worse about trying to get a lot more money out of me if they feel like I'm one of their good friends. And truth be told, I try and practice what I preach. Just this morning, I got a text at like 8:30 this morning from a woman that I bought, and I did a wholesale deal on her property. Oh gosh, I don't know, a year ago, 9 months ago, something like that. She texted me at Easter and was like, hey, Jesse, just wanted to say happy Easter. Hope you and your family have a great day. I responded right away, Carolyn, thank you so much. I hope you and Stan have a great time too. How are the kids? How's the new house going? Oh, it's great. We love it. She just texted me this morning. I was getting ready. I was driving my truck on the way to a closing. And she texted me and said, hey, I hope her text said, I hope you're not upset. I gave your number to one of my old coworkers who wants to sell their house. Hope you don't mind. Yes, I'm so upset about that. You know what I mean? So pissed off now, but that's again, because I was able to build that trust and respect and friendship with her to where she feels inclined to, when she's talking to one of her associates, one of her people in her circle, and they're talking about selling the house, what's the first thing that came to her mind? Oh, you need to deal with this guy. He was fantastic. You know what I mean? And I'll probably end up buying her property. And again, that's how I try and focus on getting a lot of business, because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. That doesn't make any sense. Does anybody have any questions about anything I talked about? Laura, I saw that you had your hand raised before you shut off your video. Oh, Laura's taking a nap. Sorry. Carlos, any feedback?
Man, this was great. This recording is gonna be available for everybody to watch it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and upload it real quick and send it to everybody. I mean, to my clients. And if you need it from your CSM, your account manager, please let them know.
All right. Awesome. Anybody else have any questions? Any objections you guys want me to try and cover on the spot?
Oh, there was a question from Michelle, by the way.
All right. Is Michelle still
And
in?
then-
Michelle Ellis?
Yeah,
I'm here.
Oh, holy shit. Look at that. Here, hang on a second. I just pulled up the group chat, the chat thing. I didn't even realize this was going on over here. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Tell me the question, Michelle.
So basically, I'm just curious how you come up with your construction budget and if you make your offer at the first appointment.
Yes. That's my
Okay,
answer.
so how do you come up with your
Yes.
construction budget, like right
I
there on the
completely wing
spot?
it. I completely wing it. I overestimate everything. I overestimate everything. And to be honest with you, listen, I'm great at swinging low ball offers. I'm not great at swinging a hammer. I know my wheelhouse. I'm one of those guys that you're not going to catch me in there building anything. It's just the way it is. So what I do is, I try and stay on top of like trends with stuff. I live really close to a Lowe's, to be honest with you. So I actually go to Lowe's and like, I'll look at what like wood cost, you know what I mean? I'll look at like what like entry level kitchen cabinets cost, that type of stuff. So that when I walk a property, I can look at a property pretty easy and be like, okay, so I know that I can get a 2x4 for this much money. We're going to have to stud this place out, drywall it out, finish the drywall, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll start to kind of formulate ideas in my mind as to what I look to do. The other thing that I would say is a real good thing that I kind of did when I was brand new was I would tell customers that we have a 50-50 rule at our company, which is we can't do any renovations that are going to take over 50 days or $50,000. Fortunately, this one's probably going to come in just under that. They don't know what I'm going to spend the $50,000 on, but in their mind, I'm going into it planning on having to spend $50,000 in 2 months worth of my time. And the truth is you can do a lot of construction for $50K.
Okay,
So,
that's
you know,
helpful.
because the reason I'm hesitant to try and give you an exact answer on that is where are you at? Like where do
Near
you live?
Austin, near Austin, Texas.
To be honest, I don't know any of the prices in Austin. So I don't know how much drywall guys go for or anything like that. But here's what I would tell you. Don't be afraid to put something under contract. That's how I walk most of my buyers through properties after I put them under contract is I'll end up telling the person, hey, listen, you're going to have to give me access to the property, you know, a few times. And it depends, you know, if it's a situation where I'm closing the deal within 3 months, I'll tell them usually, hey, once we get about 4 to 6 weeks out from closing, I'm going to probably walk a few of my contractors through here with me so that we can start to get a scope of work together and we can start to order the materials that we're going to need for the project. In reality, the people that I'm usually walking through aren't my contractors. They're usually buyers. You know what I mean? And I'm walking them through to kind of show them the property. But what helped me tremendously was joining a local real estate investors group that I found that's kind of in my local market. I go to a lot of those types of meetings. And from that, I met guys that are drywall, that own a drywall company. I met a guy that owns a framing company. And usually they're kind of like social mixer events where there's like a bar type situation that's open for a half hour before or after the meeting. And it was a little weird for me at first because I didn't really know the industry and I wasn't involved in the business. I had never really had a ton of experience like with flipping homes or home construction, but I just kind of went up to him and would literally just say, you know, hey, can I bend your, I see you got a hat on that says LaVia Drywall Services. Can I bend your ear for a second? And usually they were always like, yeah. And I'd be like, hey, how much does drywall cost? Like, do you guys do that by square foot or like linear foot? Like, and I started to kind of learn prices and things that way so
Yeah.
that I could start to kind of get a grasp. But a good rule of thumb is on an entry level home, you're going to probably be at around $10,000 for a kitchen. For a nicer property, meaning like a property that you could see a mom, dad, their 2 kids and a dog living in out in the suburbs, you're usually looking at around $20K for a kitchen. And for baths, it's usually a real entry level place. You can usually get done for around $5K. A higher end bath, you're usually looking at around 10 to 15. Roofing, you can get all those numbers online. But roofing around here goes by, everything in roofing goes by square,
At a
which is 10
square.
by 10. And if you have a lot of experience with roofing, you don't need me to tell you this, but in my local area, it's normally around 450 to 550 a square is what you're paying. So it's kind of with me, I just kind of eyeball it and figure out from there what I'm going to be looking at. And I try and get my best estimate. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I'm not afraid to go back to the seller and say, hey, listen, I made a little bit of a mistake on this. My numbers didn't come in exactly where I needed them to be. Can we rediscuss price if we have to? But I try and always, so what I do when I look at a property, it depends if it's a fix and flip or if it's a buy and hold. If it's a buy and hold, I'll usually try and go, whatever I estimate the value is. And then I usually try and go at around 70% from that, and then deduct all my repairs, and then deduct an extra $20,000 for myself. And then I'll usually throw in an extra $10,000 in kind of wiggle room. And that's where I usually try and start my offer off at.
Okay.
So
Okay,
like if I
that's
walk
helpful.
if I walk a property and I realistically think that it's going to cost me $25,000 in renovation, that number automatically becomes 35 to 40,000. And then I need to make 20,000 on top of it. So now it becomes 65,000. And then I'm throwing an extra 10 grand on there for like a little bit of a buffer room. So now I'm at around 75, 80,000 off of what I need to be. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yep.
Anybody else have any
That's
other
good.
questions? No? All right. Well, guys, for any of you guys that know me, you have my cell phone number. Please don't be afraid to text me, call me, send up smoke signals, flares, anything you need. If you guys need any help on anything, and make sure you reach out to your CSMs. And if there's anything I can do to help any of you guys, just let us know. Okay. So on that
Thank
note,
you.
I will see you guys all next week.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Oh, wow.
Bye.
Laura's back. Look at that. Here we thought we were
Here.
just going to get your camera from now on. So you guys want to hear a joke real quick? I just heard this joke and I thought it was kind of funny. So a friend of mine had to go, like I said, a friend of mine had to go to the mechanic, right? And she drives her car to this mechanic and she called me and she was like, Jesse, you're not going to believe this. And I was like, what's going on? And she was like, there's a penguin at the mechanic. He drove his little penguin car to the mechanic and he's trying to get his little penguin car fixed. And I was like, are you serious? So she talked to the little penguin and was like, hey, how you doing, Mr. Penguin? He was like, I'm good, but I'm hot. I'm supposed to be down in Antarctica and here I am hanging out with Carlos in Colombia. So the little penguin was like, I'm going to walk down the street and get some ice cream. So the little penguin waddled his way down to get some ice cream. And he walked in and the ice cream man was like, hey, Mr. Penguin, what can I get for you? And he said, I want 3 scoops of vanilla ice cream. But penguins, they don't have hands. They just have their little flippers. So he gave him a little cup of ice cream and he took it and he waddled over to a table and he sat there and he was just smacking the ice cream against his face. And it was all over his beak and his neck, his chest, but he just loved it. He had the greatest little penguin ice cream experience ever. So he gets all done his ice cream and he starts to waddle back down to the mechanic. And my friend is sitting there watching him. And the penguin comes in, the mechanic goes, Mr. Penguin, it's good to see you. He said, I think I figured out the problem. And he goes, what is it? And he says, it looks like you just blew a seal. And the penguin goes, no, I was just eating ice cream. I swear. So it was a horrible joke. I get it. But
Yeah.
all right. On that note, yes, the blowing a seal. No, just eating ice cream. So, all right. On that note, see you guys. Have a great day.
Thank
See you, everybody.
too.
Bye.
Bye, guys.